They know that I don't want any pity. They never say, "Oh, Mom, you're not walking well today."
She sang with them, danced with them, made millions laugh with them. But some of Hollywood's biggest names secretly hated Annette Funicello. One famous actor called her Disney's pet and refused to speak to her off-camera. Another whispered lies to producers. Some formed secret alliances against her. For years, Annette stayed silent. She protected their identity even as they tried to ruin her. But before she died, she finally revealed the truth. And it shocked even Walt Disney. Annette Funicello was born on October 22, 1942, in Utica, New York. Her parents, Virginia Gian Albano and Joseph Edward Funicello, were proud Italian-Americans raising their daughter in a tight-knit working-class neighborhood. In that part of Utica, family meant everything. The smell of garlic and fresh bread drifted through the streets. Italian was spoken almost as often as English. Life was simple, but full of pride and warmth. That strong sense of community became a part of Annette, shaping her personality before she ever set foot on a stage. At the age of 4, her parents packed up and moved west, landing in California's San Fernando Valley. They weren't chasing Hollywood fame, they just wanted a better life. But the move turned out to be the start of something much bigger. Annette was painfully shy, barely able to speak up in public. So her mother signed her up for dance classes, hoping she'd build some confidence. What they didn't expect was how quickly Annette took to the stage. Her quiet nature melted away under the spotlight. The dance lessons lit a spark that neither she nor her parents saw coming. In December 1955, that spark turned into a flame. At just 13 years old, she performed Swan Lake at the Starlight Bowl in Burbank. It was just another recital, until it wasn't. Unbeknownst to anyone in the crowd, Walt Disney himself was sitting there quietly watching. He wasn't looking for ballerinas. He was hunting for kids with star power, and when he saw Annette glide across that stage, he saw something rare. Grace, charisma, and something he couldn't quite explain. Within days, she got a phone call that changed her life forever. Disney wanted her on his brand new TV show, The Mickey Mouse Club. The auditions were brutal. Over 200 kids showed up, each hoping to be one of the 24 Mouseketeers. Annette wasn't first in line. She wasn't even second or third. She was the final one selected. Number 24. But Disney had a feeling about her. He saw something the others didn't. She wasn't just talented, she was real. Audiences would connect with her, and he knew it. He gave her a shot, and she didn't disappoint. By the time she signed her 7-year contract, she was earning $160 a week. That was already more than some adults made in a month. But the contract had a kicker. If she did well, her pay would rise fast. Soon she was making $500 a week. Add in merchandising royalties, reruns, and public appearances. And by the time she was done, Annette Funicello was a millionaire. At just 20 years old. What really stunned the Disney studio, though, was what happened next. Fan mail, not just a few letters here and there, thousands. By the end of the first season, she was getting 6,000 to 8,000 letters every month. No one saw it coming. None of the other Mouseketeers were even close. In fact, only Elizabeth Taylor got more letters at the time, and she was already a major movie star. One day, Walt Disney called Annette into his office. He looked confused. He asked, "Do you have lots of Italian relatives?" She said no. "Because the amount of mail for you is incredible," he said. He couldn't believe it. Her charm had reached far beyond her roots. America, young boys in particular, had fallen for her. Some even sent her watches and rings, basically proposing through the mail. and she sent every single one back. That wholesome, kind-hearted image wasn't an act. She wasn't just appearing in dance numbers anymore. Soon, she was leading entire shows. In 1956, she starred in Adventure in Dairyland, filmed on a real farm in Verona, Wisconsin. It was part story, part education. Viewers saw her interact with cows, farmers, and rural life, a far cry from Hollywood glitz. But people loved it. Then came Spin and Marty, where she played a sweet, down-to-earth ranch girl. These roles made her a household name, and they weren't just TV hits. They led to comics, books, and reruns that lasted decades. But even the happiest chapters come to an end. In 1958, the Mickey Mouse Club aired its final episode. On set, the cast hugged, said their goodbyes, and cried. Annette cried the hardest. She later said, "I never cried so hard in my life." Most of the Mouseketeers were let go, but not Annette. Disney invited her to his office again. She feared she was getting fired. Instead, he handed her a new contract, this time for her own serial. She wasn't being let go, she was being elevated. Behind the scenes, there was a different kind of story. A teenage love story. During that first year of the show, Annette quietly dated fellow Mouseketeer Lonnie Burr. At one party, he gave her a ring, and they decided to go steady, at least for a few hours. Her father wasn't thrilled. He made her return the ring immediately. Still, the two shared one special moment. Lonnie gave Annette her very first kiss. He didn't even know that fact until 1994, when her autobiography revealed it. Decades later, they reunited for a TV movie called Lots of Luck. It was the only time two original Mouseketeers acted together as adults. It was a sweet, full-circle moment, showing that even in the cutthroat world of Hollywood, some childhood memories last forever. In 1959, something unexpected happened. A bubbly teenage girl named Annette Funicello released a song that was only 1 minute and 38 seconds long. But it made music history. The song was called Tall Paul, and it didn't just become a hit. It became a national sensation. It climbed all the way to number 7 on the Billboard Hot 100 and number 6 in Canada. That made Annette the first female singer ever to break into the top 10 with a rock and roll single. The song was written by the Sherman Brothers and Bob Roberts. That same success led to a major break. Dick Clark invited her on his famous Caravan of Stars tour. She hit the road from September to November 1959, sharing the stage with Paul Anka, Duane Eddy, the Coasters, and others. On October 21st in Houston, the tour even stopped mid-show to celebrate her birthday on stage. It wasn't all smooth sailing, though. Some nights, the crowd got rowdy. Fights broke out. People were arrested. But Annette? She just kept singing. Her rise was so fast and powerful that Walt Disney hired the Sherman Brothers exclusively after that. They would later win an Oscar for Mary Poppins. By 1960, Disney tried something bold. They released a new album called Italianette. The concept was clear: package Annette in an Italian theme. She was pictured on the cover snapping her fingers, dressed in a playful Italian style. The music followed the theme too. The biggest hit from the album was O Dio Mio. It was romantic, dramatic, and different from anything she had done. Critics said the song felt like lounging on velvet, and the public agreed. It sold over 1 million copies. Other tracks on the album also leaned into the mood. Mia Cara, Mi Amore, Dream Boy, and Please Please Signore. Many were written by the Sherman Brothers. It was more than just a music release, it was a full marketing experiment. This Italian-themed album sat between two others in a clever trilogy. Before it came Hawaii Annette, and after it came Dance Annette. Disney was building her image step by step. In the summer of 1960, Pineapple Princess dropped. And again, it worked. It hit number 11 on the Billboard charts and stuck around for 9 weeks. It became her third biggest hit. The song was also written by the Sherman Brothers and anchored the Hawaiianette album. That record had a strong tropical flair. Annette wore a Hawaiian print dress. The track list included Blue Hawaii, Song of the Islands, and Hukilau Song. There were only 12 songs, and the entire album was just 26 minutes long. Still, it left a big mark. Some versions of the record even came with a special pink label bragging that Pineapple Princess was included. The song was covered in multiple languages. In 1999, Hawaiian group Nalio Pilimahana did a new version. A German cover appeared too, called Annana Nana Nas Prinzessin. Even in 2021, the song popped up in the comedy Barb and Star Go to Vista Del Mar. It never really disappeared. Behind the scenes, Walt Disney had a very specific plan for Annette. He wanted her to be the next Teresa Brewer. Brewer had topped charts in the 1950s with quirky hits like Music, 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 and had recorded over 600 songs in all. Disney admired her success and wanted to copy that formula. He believed Annette could follow the same path. But here's the twist. Annette didn't credit her sound to any singer. She credited her producer, Tutti Camerata. Annette Funicello was just 17 when she met 18-year-old Paul Anka at a dinner. They clicked instantly. What started as a simple conversation grew into something much deeper. Within a year, they were inseparable. They'd spend hours talking on the phone, sometimes up to 3 hours a night. Over time, they made more than 100 calls. For two teenagers in the spotlight, it was more than just a crush. Paul called her his first love. Annette said she felt the same. And even though the world saw them as young and naive, Annette later wrote, "Just because we were 17 didn't mean our love wasn't real. The romance was so powerful that it inspired hit songs." Paul wrote, "Put Your Head on My Shoulder" in 1959. And the next year he wrote, "Puppy Love." He wrote that one after hearing people brush off their relationship, calling it Puppy Love. The song climbed to No. 2 on the Billboard charts. He even sang it to her over the phone. They created music together too. On one track, Paul sat at the piano and told her, "Think of the words, Annette. Say what comes to your mind. I'll fit the music to it." It wasn't just romance. It was collaboration, inspiration, and something rare for two people so young. But Hollywood didn't make it easy. Annette was under contract with Disney, and Disney ran a tight ship. Paul remembered it clearly. Every time they saw each other, they had a chaperone. He wasn't even allowed to officially date her. Disney executives kept warning him, "Mr. Disney doesn't want you near her." They treated Annette like property. Paul had to sneak around just to get a moment alone with her. One time, he convinced a staffer to distract Annette's mother with a card game, just so he could steal a kiss. The restrictions weren't just annoying, they were suffocating. In time, the pressure wore them down. Their love was real, but they were moving in different directions. In a 2024 interview, Paul, now 82, said it straight. "She wanted to get married. I couldn't do it." He was scared of commitment, and he knew he couldn't give her what she needed. Soon after the breakup, Annette started dating Paul's agent, Jack Gilardi. She married him. A year later, Paul married someone else in Paris. Even after all that, the pain never quite faded. Frankie Avalon once told Paul, "She did love you," and Paul simply replied, "Well, I loved her." While her love life was changing, her career was about to explode. On July 11, 1963, Beach Party hit theaters. It didn't just do well, it broke records. On opening day alone, it made $48,226. In the first week, from just 30 theaters, it earned $292,800. By By the end of the year, the film had pulled in $1.2 million on the budget, under $800,000. The executives at American International Pictures were stunned. They predicted the film would reach $3 to $4 million. It was their biggest hit by far and helped launch an entire genre. Kids were lining up to see it. Theaters were packed. And Beach Party beat out big names like The Byrds and The Nutty Professor. In September, the studio heads won Producers of the Year. Annette had become a box office queen, but success brought enemies. Just before a live national performance, her custom-made outfit vanished. She had to wear a spare costume that didn't fit. She looked uncomfortable, and the audience noticed. Later, it came out that a jealous colleague, one who had been bumped from a lead role, had hidden the outfit on purpose. No one ever heard Annette complain. She stayed quiet. She thanked the crew. She never named names, but everyone backstage knew what had happened. The jealousy was boiling just beneath the surface. And it didn't stop there. As the beach movie craze kept growing, producers wanted more. More skin, more appeal. They decided Annette needed a makeover. The next script added bikini scenes and dances in revealing outfits. When she saw the changes, she refused. She felt it betrayed everything she stood for, especially the trust of the fans who had followed her since the Mickey Mouse Club. The producers weren't happy. They got cold, fast. They replaced her in promotional material. They even cast another actress. Disney had to step in to calm things down. Annette held her ground. In a world that constantly asked young women to sell their image, she said no. That integrity made her a target. Behind the cheerful beach scenes, other actresses were furious. They felt Annette didn't even have to try. She was always picked, always praised, always perfect. That perfect image irritated everyone who had to fight harder. It wasn't just jealousy, it was resentment. One rival, bitter about being replaced, hid Annette's costume before that live broadcast. Others whispered that she only got roles because she was Disney's favorite. And maybe she was, but she also carried the weight of that favoritism. While others clawed for attention, she had to defend the image that made her a star in the first place. Annette Funicello was just 22 when she fell in love with a man 12 years older than her, Jack Gilardi, her Hollywood agent. At the time, she was transitioning from her Disney child star days into a full-blown teen icon, starring in hits like Babes in Toyland and the Beach Party series with Frankie Avalon. Gilardi wasn't just any agent. He was the man guiding her career. Their professional relationship quietly shifted into something more personal. And by January 1965, they were married. The reaction from the public was immediate and emotional. In fact, Charles Schulz even used his Peanuts comic strip to show Linus crying over Annette's wedding, saying, "I can't stand it. This is terrible. How depressing. Annette Funicello has grown up." But behind the headlines and the cartoon tears was a relationship with unsettling layers. Annette later admitted that Gilardi called her Dolly, the same nickname her father used. At the time, she thought it was sweet. In hindsight, it was a sign she still saw herself as a girl, not yet a woman ready for marriage. She confessed that when they wed, she still felt like a 16-year-old. She didn't want to argue, didn't want to upset him, so she let Gilardi make every major decision. They had 3 children together, Gina, Jack Jr., and Jason, but as the years passed, that quiet obedience turned into quiet suffering. As she grew more confident, she began to feel trapped. Her marriage wasn't a partnership. It was a one-sided arrangement, born out of naivety and power imbalance. One bright spot in her life during this time was Frankie Avalon. Their on-screen chemistry had created a successful string of beach movies. But off-screen, their friendship became something rare in show business: honest, loyal, and lasting. Avalon became godfather to her daughter Gina, and he wasn't just a name on a certificate. He stayed involved with the family for over 3 decades, even after the cameras stopped rolling. Their friendship deepened during the 1987 filming of Back to the Beach, when Annette first started showing symptoms of multiple sclerosis. Frankie was there. He saw the change. He stayed in touch with her children when she couldn't speak in her final years. While Hollywood relationships often fade with fame, this one never did. Avalon, a father of 8, treated the Funicellos like family and stood by them until Annette's death in 2013. Between 1981 and 1983, after nearly 18 years of marriage, Annette finally ended things with Gilardi. She was no longer that obedient young wife. The divorce, while painful, marked a turning point in her life. She had grown. She had learned to speak up. Rather than drag it through the courts like many celebrity couples of the time, they settled quietly. More importantly, she made sure her children stayed close to their father. Those 5 years as a single mother were some of the most important of her life. She drove carpools, volunteered at St. Cyril's School, and finally found her voice. She described those years as the time she truly became herself. No longer afraid of conflict, no longer living in someone else's shadow. Then came Glenn Holt. They had met years earlier at the Hollywood Park racetrack, back when she was just a teenager visiting with her parents. Holt was a harness horse trainer and remembered her fondly. After her divorce, she returned to the track and reconnected with him. This time, they were both in their 40s, both divorced, and both ready to build something real. Their romance moved slowly. It started with friendship. On May 3, 1986, they married. At the reception, Mickey Mouse appeared and danced with the bride, a magical nod to her Disney past. Together, they blended their families and made it work. In early 1987, Annette Funicello was 45 years old and enjoying a career comeback. She had reunited with Frankie Avalon and was back on screen for Back to the Beach. But behind the scenes, something terrifying was happening. She was feeling dizzy all the time. Headaches wouldn't stop. And worst of all, she could barely walk straight. Doctors gave her the diagnosis that changed everything: multiple sclerosis. Instead of telling anyone, she kept it to herself. Not her friends, not even her family. For 5 long years, she hid it. While smiling for the cameras and performing on stage, her body was slowly shutting down. She was terrified of being seen as weak or broken. Even as she stumbled during filming, she said nothing. No one knew that the woman they saw dancing and laughing was barely holding it together. But hiding it came with a price. People noticed something was wrong. She couldn't walk properly. She looked unsteady. Whispers started. Was she drunk? Was she hiding a drinking problem? Rumors exploded in the press. Tabloids said she had turned into just another washed-up child star with a bottle in her hand. It wasn't true, but the gossip was relentless. For someone who had always been seen as America's sweetheart, it was devastating. Annette didn't speak up because she feared people wouldn't love her anymore. So instead of correcting the lie, she lived with the shame. She was battling a disease that slowly steals everything. Yet the world thought she was just another Hollywood burnout. The more they gossiped, the more it hurt. And finally, it became too much. In July 1992, she decided to speak out. She sat down for a powerful interview on 2020 and told the world the truth. She had been living with MS since 1987. The revelation shocked everyone. People cried, they apologized, and they listened. She explained that she kept it secret because she didn't want to worry her fans. But the rumors had gone too far. That same year, Disney named her a Disney legend. The timing felt perfect. Annette wasn't just a former Mouseketeer anymore. She became the face of a disease that millions were too afraid to talk about. Her honesty helped others come forward. She turned pain into purpose. And she wasn't finished yet. In 1993, she created the Annette Funicello Research Fund for Neurological Disorders. It wasn't just a name on a letterhead. It was her fight made public. She made sure every dollar went to research. No salaries, no waste, just science. The fund backed new studies, partnered with major organizations, and focused on treatments that could actually make a difference. Her husband, Glenn Holt, supported it with everything he had. He raised money, promoted awareness, and kept the mission alive even after she passed. The fund gave families hope. It gave doctors data. And it gave Annette's suffering a reason. Glenn Holt was more than a husband. He was her lifeline. They had married in 1986, just before her symptoms began. For the next 27 years, he became her caregiver, protector, and voice. As the disease got worse, he adapted. When she could no longer walk in 2004, Glenn built a custom wheelchair using a harness racing seat. When she lost her ability to speak in 2009, he still talked to her every day. By then, she needed a feeding tube. She was completely dependent. But Glenn never placed her in a facility. He stayed by her side, hired nurses, and fought for her dignity. He even joined her foundation's board and helped organize funding campaigns. He wasn't just taking care of her body, he was preserving her spirit. But the pain didn't stop. In March 2011, disaster struck again. Their home in Encino caught fire. It was the same house Annette had lived in for nearly 40 years. She was inside when it started, along with Glenn and a nurse. Firefighters got there quickly, but the damage was already done. The house was burned beyond repair. She inhaled smoke and had to be taken to the hospital. She survived, but the trauma was brutal. The home where she had once raised her kids and hosted friends was gone. They sold the remains for $714,250 and walked away from their old life. With nowhere else to go, they moved to a small ranch outside Bakersfield. It was quiet, rural, and far from Hollywood. The land was simple, but it offered peace. For the final years of her life, Annette stayed there, surrounded by farmland instead of flashing lights. Glenn took care of her around the clock, making sure she stayed comfortable. It was a far cry from the stages of Disney, but it was safe. It was private, and it gave her the space to be more than the girl with a bow in her hair. In 2009, she lost her voice completely. The woman who once sang Tall Paul and lit up the Mickey Mouse Club could no longer speak a single word. She was 67. Her voice, her mobility, even her ability to eat, gone. She had entered the final phase of her illness. She could still blink. She could still listen. But communication had vanished. A Canadian program aired footage of her in 2012, showing just how much she had changed. Her body was still, her face silent. Her friend Shelley Fabres appeared in the segment, visibly heartbroken. The girl who had once captured America's heart had become a prisoner in her own body. On April 8, 2013, the battle ended. At Mercy Southwest Hospital in Bakersfield, Annette's family made the decision to remove her from life support. She was exactly 70 years old. Her children were by her side, Gina, Jack Jr., and Jason, holding her hands. Shelley Fabres was there too. She had been in a coma for years. Her daughter Gina said softly, "She's on her toes, dancing in heaven." The moment broke hearts across the country. Tributes poured in. Bob Iger, Disney's CEO, called her one of Walt Disney's brightest stars and praised her for facing her illness with bravery and grace. He renamed Disney's Soundstage 1 as the Annette Funicello stage. It was the very place she had filmed the Mickey Mouse Club in the 1950s. That dedication became her final home inside the world of Disney. Frankie Avalon was shattered. He had been her co-star, her date to drive-in movies, and her lifelong friend. He got the news in a text from her daughter. "She's gone," it said. Avalon had watched her disappear slowly over the years, piece by piece. In an emotional interview, he said, "She had no communication left for years. It was just a terrible existence." He shared a secret he had never told before. Disney had once banned Annette from showing her belly button in bikinis. Even at the beach, she had been expected to stay wholesome. That was the Annette the world loved. And that was the Annette he lost. Her Disney Legend Award in 1992 now feels even more important. She was the first Mouseketeer to receive the honor, and she got it just before announcing her illness to the world. A few months later, she received a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. It was like the world finally understood how much she had given. Fellow Mouseketeer Sharon Baird once said, "She never changed from that sweet person who cared so much about others," and it's true, she never changed. Not when she was a child star, not when she became a pop icon, and not when she lost her voice.